This is Joe Biden, the resident of the United States. Recently, Biden traveled abroad and made a fool of himself and America on the international stage. First, at the G20 in India.
And I want to thank the sponsors. And I particularly want to thank Prime Minister Modi and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. Mohammed bin Salman.
Biden knew that he said Mohammed bin Salman's name wrong, and then he said it wrong again. Double fail.
And President von der Leyen and the European Commissions.
Holy crap. And watch MBS's face as Biden continues to stumble and bumble.
And since he's not speaking today, I wanted to, well, maybe he is speaking today. I had a note he wasn't speaking. At any rate, I'm going to stop there. In Saudi, the sub-Saharan Africa, we're working in...
And remember, this is the man that Joe Biden is begging to produce more oil for America. Get ready for $4 and $5 gas again, America. Anyway, Biden, a pitiful old man who can barely walk upstairs, flew to Southeast Asia to kiss the communist government of Vietnam's ass so that we can have access to their gigantic deposit of minerals. And in turn, we'll waste those critical minerals to build millions of impractical electric vehicles and hundreds of thousands of useless wind turbines. So later that evening, Biden held a press conference.
It is evening, isn't it?
Where am I? What time is it? Come on, man.
Well, there's that, one of my staff members said, remember the famous song, Good Morning Vietnam? Well, good evening, Vietnam.
Oh yes, the famous song, Good Morning Vietnam. No, it was a movie, dummy. Maybe he was thinking of the Billy Joel song. Oh wait, Biden wasn't in Saigon. He was in Hanoi, so that doesn't work either.
But, no, look, for example, one of the things we did in India, we provided for a new path that's going to save everybody money, increase the global South's capacity to grow.
So Biden is referring to countries in Africa as the third world, which is a pretty derogatory term for a world leader to be using. Then he corrects himself by using the term global South. Keep this in mind for later in the video.
We're going to have a new railroad from India all the way across to the Mediterranean, shipping lanes and pipelines across the Mediterranean through Europe up into Great Britain and beyond.
So Joe Biden is saying that there's going to be a railroad from India to the Mediterranean. And this magic railroad would somehow travel not only through India's arch enemy Pakistan, but also through Iran, Iraq, and Syria. Makes sense to me. What's your problem? Anyway, during much of the press conference, Biden went out of his way to kowtow to China.
And so really what this trip was about, it was less about containing China. I don't want to contain China. I just want to make sure we have a relationship with China that is on the up and up, squared away. Everybody knows what it's all about. But as I said, we're not looking to hurt China, sincerely. We're all better off if China does well. I want to see China succeed economically. China does well by the international rules, grows the economy. It has nothing to do with hurting China. It's not about containing China. It's not about isolating China. But we're not trying to hurt China.
Have you ever seen a president give a worse performance regarding foreign policy? Absolutely pathetic. So then it came time for Joe Biden to answer questions from the press. But of course, the reporters and questions were chosen in advance.
And now I will take your questions. Let me see, they gave me 5 people here. Sorry. Okay. Am I pronouncing it Avilia? Did I pronounce the name correctly?
No, he didn't. Her name is Aurelia. There's no V in Aurelia.
Avilia?
I had a question on the climate crisis. You just mentioned the G20. Just this week, the United States warned that if there is no phasing out of fossil fuels, it won't be possible to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement. There was no agreement at the G20.
And the only existential threat humanity faces, even more frightening than a nuclear war, is global warming going above 1.5 degrees in the next 10 years.
Gee, would you rather the temperature rise 1.5 degrees Celsius over a period of time? Or have large sections of the United States decimated by nuclear weapons, not to mention nuclear fallout? When Joe Biden or John Kerry or any Democrat for that matter says that global warming is more frightening than nuclear war, they are an unserious person. And speaking of unseriousness, strap yourselves in.
And there's my brother loves there's famous lines from movies that he always quotes, and one of them is there's a movie about John Wayne. He's an Indian scout, and they're trying to get I think it was the Apache, one of the great tribes of America, back on the reservation, and he's standing with the Union. So they're all on their horses and their saddles, and there's 3 or 4 Indians in headdresses, and the Union soldiers. And the Union soldiers basically saying to the Indians, "Come with me, we'll take care of you, everything will be good." And the Indian looks at John Wayne and points to the Union soldier and says, "He's a lion, dog-faced pony soldier." Well, there's a lot of lion, dog-faced pony soldiers out there about global warming, but not anymore. All of a sudden, they're all realizing it's a problem.
That was the leader of the free world giving an international press conference, incoherently rambling on for more than a minute about a John Wayne movie that doesn't exist. We are at peak clown world, ladies and gentlemen. And let's watch and listen to an out-of-breath Joe Biden make a special announcement.
And look, nobody likes having celebrated international meetings if you don't know what you want at the meeting, if you don't have a game plan. He may have a game plan. He just hasn't shared it with me. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
They don't call him Sleepy Joe for nothing. And for this next part, well, I need to set it up. While Biden was in India on Saturday, he met with Chinese Premier Li Qiang. And here is Biden the next day in Vietnam talking about it.
My team, my staff still meets with President Xi's people and his cabinet in effect. I met with his number 2 person here in India today.
Except today, he is in Vietnam, and his meeting with that Chinese official was the day before. He thinks he's in India. Nope, nothing to see here, guys.
In India today. We talked about at the conference overall. We talked about stability. We talked about making sure that the Southern Hemisphere.
So again, Biden referred to African countries as the third world, and he knew he messed up, but he couldn't remember the term Global South, so instead he came up with Southern Hemisphere. And this left the president's staff with no choice.
Had access to change it, it wasn't confrontational at all.
Thank you, everybody. This ends the press conference. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Raised it with every person I met with.
Mr. President, are you worried about your son being indicted, Mr. President?
81 million votes, guys. 81 million votes. So after the Vietnam disaster, Joe Biden needed a win. But instead, he did something that a United States president hasn't done in 22 years. he passed on attending a 9/11 memorial. Not in New York, not at the Pentagon, and not in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Instead, he gave a speech on an airport tarmac in Alaska while Air Force One was being refueled.
Never forget. Never forget. We never forget. Each of us, each of those precious lives stolen too soon when evil attacked. Ground Zero in New York, and I remember standing there the next day and looking at the building. I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell. It looked so devastating because from where you could stand.
Except that is a lie. Joe Biden was not at Ground Zero the day after 9/11 because he was on the floor of the Senate in Washington, D.C.
They stand united in a readiness to answer the call of their fellow neighbors, as Senator Clinton and Senator Schumer pointed out, as they lined the blocks in New York City to give blood. I would be dumbfounded if in those lines you did not see black faces, Asian faces, Hispanic, Caucasian, every race.
Of course he mentioned race. Typical. Anyway, Biden did eventually go to New York City, but it was nearly a week and a half after the attacks.
The plume of fire that shot up in the sky in Pentagon, I remember seeing as I got off the Amtrak train on my way to work in the United States Senate.
Press X for doubt. I do not believe that happened either. But true or not, Joe Biden wanted to talk about the most important part of 9/11, which was, of course, Joe Biden.
Governor Dunleavy, it's good to see you. Governor and I have something in common. We're both from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I wish I had him playing in my high school ball club when I was playing. But I could have been an All-American having you in front of me. I know how hard it is on a day like this. How can we reopen that wound? It's like opening a black hole in your chest, sucking you into it again, bringing you back to that moment. I was on my way to speak to students at the University of Delaware to try to make sense of what happened. And guess what? My mother had to put it a different way. My mother was a 5'2" little Irish lady who had a backbone like a ramrod. She used to say, and I mean this sincerely, courage lies in every heart. And then last year, I made the decision to take out Zawahiri. And together over the last 2.5 years, I've worked to make good on that promise, signing more than 25 bipartisan laws. My friend, war hero, senator, and statesman John McCain. John and I disagreed like hell, like two brothers. We'd argue like hell on the Senate floor. Then we go to lunch together. I went out to see John just before he passed away at his home. As I was walking out, I put my hand on his chest and he pulled me down. He kissed me. He said, "I love you. Will you do my eulogy?"
The utter selfishness, right? Every year 9/11 is supposed to be a day of mourning, a day of national unity. But instead, Joe Biden made it about himself. I know you're shocked. Anyway, that's it for now. Follow me on X at Don't Walk Run. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time. If there is next time.